Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to BookTrek 2021. This is a 5-month mission I'm embarked on with a bunch of other booktubers where we're reading Star Trek fiction for the second half of 2021. So we started in August with the original series, then we moved on to Star Trek The Next Generation, and then we did Deep Space Nine, which is a bit of a disaster for me, and now we're doing Voyager. For the month of November, we're doing Star Trek Voyager. Which I've had a rocky patch with recently because I've been reading officially sanctioned extra-canonical stories where a writer or two decide to continue the adventures of the crew of Voyager and all of the different characters that spawned therefrom without any reference to the set continuity of the show. The show, Voyager, ends. It has a discrete ending. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And after that ending is where a lot of those recent Voyager novels that I read were set. And although the writer, was one particular writer that I read a few books from, understood her Voyager characters, something felt a little bit off about it. I haven't quite been able to put my finger on what it is. I said yesterday that the main reason that it bothered me was because it felt like it was pointless, like a writer was just making things up. And a few of you emailed me and said, well, aren't all writers making things up, including the writers writing TV episodes for Voyager? That is true. I'm trying to nail down what exactly my objection is. And I think it's that those later episodes are simply outside of canon. There's nothing canonical happening anywhere around them, right? If somebody goes back in time, somebody writes a Voyager episode, a Voyager novel from, let's say, the second season of the show, before the arrival of Seven of Nine, before major alliances, before some original characters left the cast, before any of that. If somebody decides to set a Voyager episode in there, well, at least we have lots of episodes. We have lots of canon from that time. So you can get those characters just right. You can frame the action and the story in the framework of what is already established as canon. Whereas if you're writing something 10 years after Voyager gets home, there is no canon for that at all. And who knows if you're getting the characters right, because they could change a lot in 10 years. So I decided to go back to earlier Voyager writing. And because that 10 years later expedition of mine started to leave a bad taste in my mouth, the last thing I want is a reprise of what happened to me with the Star Trek Deep Space Nine novels. So I decided that I would go back to before Seven of Nine joined the cast, and also that I would stick with someone who was bound to get the characters right. That's a big thing, right? When you're reading Star Trek fiction, there are two things that you're going there for. One is to see your old characters in a new adventure, and the other is that your old characters feel, sound, and act like their old selves. The spectacular nature of the invention of the adventure doesn't really mean much if the characters don't register. And the characters can register all they want, but if the adventure is dumb or boring or derivative or Q, then that's not going to help either. You want a combination of those two to the extent that that's possible. So I went back to an earlier Voyager novel that I was pretty sure I was in good hands for in terms of character. It's Star Trek Voyager Mosaic, and it's by Jerry Taylor, who was a showrunner for Voyager. So if anybody's going to know these characters, it's going to be Jerry Taylor. And that part works. The characters in here are marvelously well done, particularly Catherine Janeway, as you can tell from the cover. It's the other part, the adventure part, that was a little bit weak here. Not in and of itself. There's an adventure here that with the Kazon Nistro. The Kazon were a very interesting alien species that we got in the first couple of seasons of Voyager. When Voyager's first flung to the Delta Quadrant, they meet the Kazon. Who have great big ships, but relatively primitive technology compared to the Federation, and have an interesting characters. I found the Kazon very interesting. Of course, if you're going to stick with the story of Voyager, a starship 75,000 light years from home, trying to get through the rest of the galaxy, trying to cross that space as fast as possible, then of course Voyager is not going to linger anywhere. And if they're traveling at high warp, that means they're going to leave even promising alien species behind, unless, like the Borg, that alien species spans many, 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 many systems and parsecs and a whole chunk of the galactic rim. The Kazon aren't like that. So you knew when you met them that they would not last forever. So I'm not knocking the writers for leaving them behind, literally leaving them behind, but they were interesting, and they are one half of the plot of this book, and that half of the plot of this book is interesting. The problem is that the other half of the book is so much more interesting that you only want the book to be that. You want Jerry Taylor to simply do away with the current episode of the week format, because the other half of the book is the personal story of Catherine Janeway, of how she became the captain that she is when we meet her in the show. And it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. It almost doesn't read like it belongs connected to the other part of the book. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who read this book, or who in this case reread it, and just wanted that to be the whole book. Just call it whatever you like, but let's not bother with the red herring of a current adventure. Just tell us Janeway's story. If you have to retitle the book, fine. That part was amazingly good to revisit, especially since I've had a long time with this show since I first read this book. I've had a long time with it being over. I've had a long time with knowing how it ends. Had a long time with thinking about it, comparing it with other Star Trek shows, rereading some of the novels. This just resonated more and more. One of the things I've also had time with is to read the book, the autobiography of Captain Catherine Janeway, which is not by Jerry Taylor, but is heavily reliant on Jerry Taylor's work. So my Voyager read for today was a success. Mosaic was a success. You wouldn't think that from what I've just said, but I was kind of discounting the Kazon parts and just mainly concentrating on the Catherine Janeway parts, and that worked really well. So there you go. At least I'm not falling into the depths of despair. So we'll see. We'll see who we encounter next time as BookTrek rolls along towards December. December is right around the corner here in the United States. We are gearing up for Thanksgiving, and then as soon as you recover from Thanksgiving, from a tryptophan coma, it's already December. And in December, we're moving away from Voyager. We're moving on to Star Trek Enterprise. So I have a few more Voyager novels that I want to reread between now and then, and I will keep you posted. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. That's it for BookTrek for today, but I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.